Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're taking this stack of material, basically excerpts from H.G. Wells' novel Meanwhile, and really digging in.
Yeah, we're pulling out the most interesting bits, the core ideas.
Exactly. This is kind of your shortcut, you know? To get a handle on this fascinating mix, Wells creates the social commentary, the personal stuff, the intellectual arguments. It's all in there.
Right, and the specific focus is this house party. It's happening at Casa Terragena, this amazing villa in Italy. Gorgeous gardens looking out over the Mediterranean.
And the timing is key, isn't it? It's set around the time of the 1933 general strike in England.
Well, yeah, that's what the characters discuss. Though it's interesting, the preface Wells wrote, Idy mentions the 1926 strike as the spark. But in the story itself, it feels very much like 33.
Okay. So our job today, our mission, is to unpack all that. The conversations, the events that pop up, the drama.
See what it tells us about these characters. They're grappling with a world that feels like it's, well, on the edge of something big.
Yeah, we're looking for those clashes. Big ideas versus, messy life, where characters surprise you, maybe show unexpected depth
Or shallowness, and how these huge historical things like the strike just crash into their individual lives. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start with the setting itself. Casa Terragena. It sounds pretty imposing.
It does. The sources describe it as long, lofty, scarlet hangings, pale brown stone, these big Italian-style stone fireplaces, very grand.
But the garden sounds like the real star here. It just climbs up behind the house, terrace after terrace.
Oh, totally. It's famous, elaborate, a real mix, too.
Yeah.
You've got classical bits, old jars, carefully placed dark trees, almost like architecture.
But then it gets wilder.
Exactly, like these spiky agave groups, huge prickly pears twisting into weird shapes.
Yeah.
They even mention an area called the Caatinga.
Caatinga.
Yeah, the source says it gives it this almost African or even alien feel. So it's this curated beauty right next to something untamed.
And that contrast keeps going when you look out, right?
Right.
Amazing views, the deep blue sea, rocky bits of coast.
But the history isn't just a view, it's literally in the ground. The old Roman road, the Via Aurelia, cuts right through the property. Imagine everyone important walked that path for centuries.
Wow. And Roman bits just popping up.
Yeah, bits of marble, statues found in the foundations, and even older stuff like tombstones by the road. There's one mentioned, Mona Lucina. The source calls it this incredibly sad little sigh from way back.
That sense of deep time, it just keeps getting stronger. There's that cave nearby. You can see it from the dining room.
And it contains remains of Cro-Magnon and Grimaldi men, prehistoric.
And Sempack, one of the characters we'll meet, points this out. It makes all of human history seem suddenly incredibly short.
It really does. Like that ancient grizzly subman, as the text calls him, was here just yesterday compared to the age of the rocks.
So that layers everything, doesn't it? This deep, deep past, the beautiful, slightly wild garden, and then this very modern, very now house party drops into the middle of it.
Yeah, some guests are having serious chats. Others are just off playing bridge. You feel that tension straight away, the perfect setting versus the turmoil outside and inside.
Okay, so who are the main people in this setting? At the center, there's Mrs. Rylands, the hostess.
Right. She's pregnant, comfortable, but seems restless, looking for stimulation.
And she has this very particular way of seeing people, doesn't she? She calls a lot of them stupids.
Yes, that's such a key thing about her. She sees these stupids as, like, obstacles, flatteners, almost enemies, like dogs are to cats, the source says.
Wow. And it's not a new thing for her?
No, it goes way back. Governesses, people at college. Her ideal is, people being as noble as their fancy furniture or their amazing gardens. She feels like stupid was king, even in supposedly smart circles.
Then we've got Mr. Sempack, the great talker.
Sempack. The description's great. An exquisite little gentleman, 60-ish, fine features, pointed beard, like a Velasquez portrait.
But then also like something shot out on a dump. That's quite the contrast.
It tells you something, yeah. He's known for being interesting, informative, and at first, Mrs. Rylands is just captivated by his talk, like the famous literary salons.
And alongside him, there's Mr. Plantagenet-Buchan.
Another exquisite little gentleman, initially described similarly, but he's different. He has these remarkable white hands, strikes poses.
Witty, good in conversation, but kind of lazy.
Hopelessly indolent and inconsecutive is the phrase used. His real passion isn't big ideas, it's beautiful little things. Love spoons, bergamotes. He just wants a nice, quiet life.
And finally, Lady Catherine.
Young, tall, lovely. Dusky hair, dark blue eyes, engaging smile. The source calls her a mental wild rose. She's actually the one who kind of encourages Sempack, gets the big conversations started.
Right, which brings us to the clash of ideas, this great talk that goes on late, especially after the stupids go off to play bridge.
Like in a racket, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sempack is really holding court.
And his vision is massive, isn't it, this coming great age?
Totally. A world of peace, justice, splendid work, he calls it. Unified methods, a global civilization, run by science, power always increasing.
He sees progress as this unstoppable force, like war is just fading away.
Yeah, a vast forward drive. War is a declining habit. And current problems, like the coal strike back home, he thinks they're false issues.
Issues? How?
Because future tech will just solve them. Why fight over coal mines when new energy sources are coming? His focus is on illuminated people, those who get the big picture and spread the ideas. They're vital, like early Christians or scientists.
But Lady Catherine, she's not buying it.
Not at all. She pushes back hard. For her, life is always struggle, competition, adventure. This idea of everyone becoming one, nonsense, she thinks.
So she believes the fundamental things don't change. Flags, kings, religion.
Exactly. Only the fashions change. She has this sort of common sense view Wills is playing with. She says the world isn't just a ball you can play football with.
She's focused on the human things.
Yeah. The things that don't matter aren't. And we see this big confrontation in the garden, in that wild Katinga bit, where she just tells Sempack his ideas are nonsense. It's the pragmatic, maybe even cynical view versus the utopian dream.
And while they're arguing about the fate of humanity, Plantagenet-Buchan is looking at the sunset.
Pretty much. He's deliberately appreciating the present moment, the flowers. He wants to avoid all the needless haste and turmoil.
His ideal life is one where nothing important happens.
He says it quite clearly. Nothing of any importance ever happened at all. He's the retreat into aesthetics, collecting quiet, beautiful things, just opting out. It's another response to this feeling of change.
And it's interesting how that deep history, the Roman road, the cave, kind of feeds into this debate about time.
Definitely. Sempack and Mrs. Rylands both reflect on it. How those thousands, millions of years make the current fuss seem maybe temporary, part of something much bigger.
It puts everything in perspective, doesn't it? Makes you wonder how significant these grand plans or immediate fights really are in the long run.
Or if they're just waves on a very deep ocean.
Speaking of immediate fights, that's when the outside world really breaks in. The general strike in England seems so far away, but it crashes their party.
Yeah, at first it's just small mentions. Philip, who Mrs. Rylands is fond of, is suddenly interested in the coal issue, which surprises her.
And you get characters like Colonel Bullis.
Oh yeah, blustering about communism, checking these Bolsheviks. The source compares him to a one-eyed Belgian griffin and says he sounds like nonsense out of the Daily Mail. Very fearful.
But then the actual news hits. French and Italian papers. Grève générale.
Nos pauvres voisins, our poor neighbors. One headline laments, England's turn for trouble has come.
And Lady Catherine's reaction is intense.
Immediate and dramatic, stirred like great music. She feels frightfully Nietzschean. Her mind just races.
Picturing total chaos back home.
Yep. Massacre at the Royal Mint, mobs marching, Scotland Yard stormed like the Bastille, machine guns on the Mall. Wild stuff.
And she doesn't just imagine it, she decides to go.
Right away. Flies back to England. She sees it as exciting. She believes these warnings from some Captain Fear and Owen. And she makes that chilling remark about England needing a dictatorship.
Wow. Shows how fast ideas can turn into action for some.
While she's sort of embracing the drama, Mrs. Rylands is more troubled, imagining dear old England torn by a monstrous civil conflict, wondering why nobody saw it coming. Different reactions entirely.
But it's not just about these big ideas and events. The sources dive deep into the personal stuff, too, the awakenings.
Especially with Philip. We see his change mostly through his letters from England during the strike. Mrs. Rylands is amazed because she saw him stuck in that stupid quicksand.
And now he's suddenly grappling with social issues.
Big time. He's reading reports on the coal dispute, looking at the owners, clinging to royalties, asking if they're just parasites. He feels they don't seem to have done a single decent thing.
And this leads him to question his own background.
Massively. He talks about a damned row with Uncle Robert, Lord Edensoke. And Edensoke sounds like a worse kind of cynical, self-interested aristocrat.
Using the strike for profit.
Yeah, speculating on foreign coal. Seeing the empire just as a way to protect money. Living only for himself, getting a kick out of besting the other fellow, laughing at losers. It really shakes Philip.
So he gets angry at the government, the press.
Very. He thinks the government is almost inviting violence. He's disgusted by the press attacks on the British Gazette. He writes about walking along the Thames, wishing there was some kind of group for clear thinking, a league for clear-headedness. Even throws out the phrase fascisti of the light.
Fascisti of the light, that's something.
It is. And what's really interesting is how he connects all this back to Sempack's ideas.
How so?
He starts seeing the strike itself as one of those false issues Sempack mentioned. He agrees with the bigger picture of Britain's decline, the need for world reconstruction.
So he thinks the current movements, socialist or communist, are just early versions.
Crude, misshapen, small anticipations, he calls them, of a much bigger, great revolutionary movement that needs to become like a new religion. He even wonders if he sort of caught this socialist bug from Mrs. Rylands.
And Mrs. Rylands, reading this back at the villa.
She sees him properly struggling, finding his feet, discovering himself through these huge questions. It's a real transformation. But tangled right up with this big political awakening is a very messy personal situation.
Ah, the affair with Puppy Clarges.
Yeah.
Which led to her leaving the villa suddenly.
Yeah. And we get Philip's side in a letter. He confesses about the swim, the torn bathing suit, calls it a lark that went totally wrong. A nervous release, he says, that left him feeling like the dirtiest of rotters.
Nervous release. That's quite a phrase. And Sempack weighs in on this.
He does, in a letter to Mrs. Rylands. And his take is surprisingly detached, almost clinical.
How does he see it?
Calls it a simple thing, even healthy, physically, as breathing mountain air. He argues it doesn't really touch Philip's love for Mrs. Rylands because he loves her for her direction, while Puppy was just simply sexual.
Ouch. I can see why Mrs. Rylands would be shocked.
Deeply hurt, yeah. She finds that nervous release idea disgusting. It makes her question Sempack's whole viewpoint, and her own inner world is complicated too. She's pregnant, experiencing this indolent well-being sometimes.
But also having this major spiritual experience.
Yes, this profound personal sense of God. Not dogma, she says, but a cosmic certitude. A simplicity beneath diversity, an absolute reassurance.
And she contrasts this sharply with conventional religion.
Right. Like Stella Binney's Catholicism, which she dismisses as bric-a-brac and ritual, leading to that amazing line. I don't want to eat God, I want to know him.
That's powerful, and she wants to share this with Philip.
Desperately. But at the same time, she feels conflicted about his new energy in the letters, especially when she's facing childbirth, feeling vulnerable. And there's that hint that his plans might mean leaving the garden she loves.
So much going on. Big ideas, politics, personal awakenings, spiritual stuff. And then, boom, something completely different happens.
The Vinciguerra rescue.
Yeah.
Just happens right there at the villa. Very sudden, very real.
And it involves Mrs. McManus, the replacement for Stella Binney.
Who's described as exceptionally real, practical, sharp, notices things about the garden, the butler Bombaccio.
And then this man, Vinciguerra, just appears, terrified, running from fascists.
Exactly. And his story is like a cold shower for everyone. He's on the run just because he wouldn't flatter some charlatan.
He talks about taking freedom for granted.
Yeah, and how progress wasn't organized for. He emphasizes the strength of stupidity, the hatred of dull people. His conclusion is stark. Progress has been waylaid and murdered.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And in that moment, Mrs. Rylands and Mrs. McManus, they just act.
Instantly. No debate. Help him hide. And Mrs. McManus is amazing, so practical, so masterful.
Finding brandy, handling the maid, lying to another guest.
Totally in control. Even dealing with the butler's suspicions about missing brandy, crumbs, shaving stuff, these mysterious shoes and socks left behind. She's got this earthy cunning and competence.
Even the maid Frant gets it.
Shows this quiet understanding. Just asks if the valet's door is locked. Simple, practical, helps the escape. They plan to disguise Vinciguerra as a nurse to get him away.
It's such a contrast, isn't it? All the high-flown talk, the internal struggles, and then this straightforward, risky act of helping someone.
It really highlights Mrs. McManus as this figure of grounded strength, someone who knows what to do at a real crisis.
Meanwhile, what about Sempack, the great talker? He's having his own crisis, isn't he?
He is. We hear he was left preposterously dislocated, totally thrown, after Lady Catherine just left him. Admits he was absurdly in love, calls it reverberate melodrama.
A bit of a come down from the grand pronouncements.
You could say that. And then Philip tells us about visiting him in London after he got hit by a bus.
Oh, right. Because he was walking along with his nose in the air and his thoughts in the year 4000.
Exactly. Wasn't looking. Broke his arm, some ribs.
So Philip takes him to his place in Dorset.
Yeah, this little house filled with books, overlooking Poole Harbor. And we meet his housekeeper, Mrs. Siddon. She clearly thinks the world of him, tells the story about how he helped her when she was down, adds a human touch to the intellectual figure.
But Sempack himself, his state of mind has shifted.
Dramatically. The accident, everything else going on,
Right.
it's forced him to look inward. He talks about facing a vast, unanticipated valley of reaction, like finding a huge, unexpected canyon on a journey.
He's losing momentum, losing heart.
Seems like it. Struggling with laziness versus the need to act. He even starts seeing hard work as just compensatory for some fundamental frustration. That's a huge change from his earlier optimism.
And Philip's view of the whole Lady Catherine thing is pretty brutal.
Yeah, calls it driveling mutual exaggeration, all pose and swagger, no real tenderness. He thinks Sempack didn't really see her, just fell back on instinct, and that she basically humbugged him in the end.
Okay, so pulling all these different threads together, the big ideas, the personal stuff, the strike, the rescue, what's the core feeling Wells is getting at?
It really seems to be this idea of meanwhile.
The idea of meanwhile, meaning.
This feeling of living in a phase of expectation.
Yeah.
You know, that sense that the old ways are dissolving, something new is coming, and it's going to change your life, change everything. But you don't know quite what or how. It's murky.
And we see all of the characters reacting differently to that meanwhile feeling, that pressure.
Absolutely. Sempack, the visionary, ends up disillusioned, looking inward. Lady Catherine jumps into dramatic, impulsive action. Plantagenet-Buchan just retreats into his beautiful, quiet things.
Mrs. Rylands has that deep internal spiritual shift, that cosmic certitude, but she also shows she can act decisively in the rescue, all while dealing with the very real physical change of pregnancy.
And Philip. He has this huge political awakening, rebels against his background, tries to figure out a new purpose, but he's also still dealing with the mess of his personal life.
Right. His final thoughts kind of capture it, don't they? The world is full of clamor, conflict, and muddle.
Yeah. And underneath it all, this waiting for the great revolution, the big shift, to become something clear, a real purpose, something like a new religion, he says.
It's a powerful picture of people trying to navigate a really turbulent time where the huge global stuff and the tiny personal moments are all tangled up and the way forward is just not clear at all.
Definitely not clear.
So that was our deep dive into these snippets of Wells's Meanwhile. We've peeled back quite a few layers, haven't we? The way big utopian ideas crash against messy reality.
The way huge events like the general strike just barge into this seemingly quiet life.
The surprising ways intellectual debates get tangled up with personal crises, and these moments of sudden action or deep internal shifts.
Yeah, think about that contrast, debating the future of humanity in this perfect ancient garden. While outside and inside the characters, there's fear, confusion, these unexpected urges. How well do the big theories hold up against, basic human stuff? Fear, politics, even just that need for nervous release.
And that idea of meanwhile. That feeling of being stuck between worlds, between the past and an uncertain future. A time of potential, sure, but also full of that clamor, conflict, and muddle. How do you navigate times like that in your own life? What does it take to find some strength or clarity or just a sense of purpose when things feel so up in the air?
It's a good question, and maybe leave yourself with this thought. If you're in a world where some feel like progress has been waylaid and murdered, but others are desperately searching for that great revolutionary movement, that new guiding purpose, what's the right mix? How much is intellectual understanding? How much is just basic human decency, integrity?
And what about that capacity for just practical action, like helping someone who suddenly needs it? How do we balance wanting peace and beauty with the fact that life involves struggle, involves change, whether we like it or not?